It's Friday, July 28th, and when it's Friday, you know what that means. It's time for Comics Forever. Welcome back to Comics Forever, the weekly show where I tell you about all the comics that we love that you should be reading. It's recently come to my attention that not everyone in the world has read the classics, like the stuff that really started the modern era of comics, like the weird stuff from the 80s and 90s. I don't want to be gatekeepy. You can start reading comics anywhere. You can start with something that came out on Wednesday. You can start with something that came out in 1939. Anywhere is good as long as you're reading the comics. But for me personally, these are a couple of the all-time greats that kind of started it all. And if you haven't read any comics, they're a fantastic place to start. So let's get right into it. First up, we are starting with the one that started it all, the one that began all the wiggity weirdness in comic book land, Saga of Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. Essentially, in 1983, Swamp Thing was kind of a failing title. It was starting, sales weren't very good. It was starting to, they might cancel it at this point. And they threw it to this random weird wizard guy from England named Alan Moore, and the comics have never been the same. This book is an all-timer. It is so cathartic if you're like me and kind of experiencing all the environmental crises in real time and dreading the heat death of the planet. Swamp Thing's got you covered. If only we had a Swamp Thing to save us. This book is incredible. There's 6 volumes altogether. This is the first one. You can start here, but I promise you'll be back to order 2 through 6. Saga of the Swamp Thing. Next up, another classic that came out right before I was born, so you know it's ancient. Sandman by Neil Gaiman. This book, I don't need to tell you much. I feel like you've probably, if not seen the show, you've probably heard of it. It's a very faithful adaptation, but some things can't be adapted perfectly, and this is one of them. This one, you get so much more from the book. It's just oozing with emotion and with these characters that you fall in love with. It's so many allusions to other literature, so much mythology, so much. It's just packed to the gills with everything that makes Neil Gaiman writing so good. And here it is. It's 10 of the skinny volumes altogether. There's 5 of these Beefy Boys. I highly recommend getting the Beefy Boys because, again, you'll tear through it. I read it at a pretty late age in life. I think I was 23 or 24 when I finally read this book, and I tore through it in a week. Yeah, if you haven't read it, pull the trigger and grab Sandman by Neil Gaiman today. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, Animal Man by Grant Morrison. This book came out right after I was born, so again, it's 30 years old at this point. So essentially, Animal Man, another, kind of obscure DC hero that was kind of on the verge of getting canceled. They just threw it to the random Scottish wizard, and the Scottish wizard, luckily, was Grant Morrison. This book changed it all. It takes the meta narrative that kind of started with Jack Kirby and Fantastic Four and kind of just pulls that thread to its logical ending. Obviously, you can see from the cover there's some meta things going on. In fact, Animal Man number 5, the Coyote Gospel, is my favorite single issue of any comic book ever. Come ask me about it. I will tell you all about it because I am obsessed. Yeah, essentially, Animal Man going on his Animal Man adventures, but things get dark, they get meta, and they get spectacular. They also get really acid trippy, which, if you know Grant Morrison, is on brand for them as well. But yeah, it's 2 of these deluxe hardcover volumes. I have both in store, and I highly recommend you expand your brain with some Animal Man today. Thanks so much for joining me for another Comics Forever. Make sure you tune in next Friday for even more Comics Forever. In the meantime, if you need more of me screaming about how obsessed I am with all of the British invasion writers, especially Grant Morrison, make sure you tune in to my podcast, Tales from a Short Box, out every Wednesday wherever you get your little podcasts. In the meantime, comics forever. We'll be right back to order 5. Why do I f this up right at the end? I forgot how to speak?